Sony and insiders around Sony have been talking about PlayStation and its smaller IP for a little while now, and I think that there's enough crosstalk to suggest that we might be seeing some amazing comebacks from Sony, including one franchise that I've spoken about a couple of times on the channel. Let's talk about it.
Whoa!
What's up guys, Canadian Guy here, and I am back with a video that was a little bit unplanned and a little bit out of the blue. But before we start, I need to hop into a time machine and go back to 2022. During that time, an insider by the name of Specialnik came forward and suggested that he heard that there was some information in regards to Sly Cooper being in development. I then went through a whole series of videos explaining different tidbits that seem to line up and directly point to the idea that a new Sly Cooper game is currently in development. Unfortunately, this was all ended when Sucker Punch themselves came out and said that there was no Sly Cooper game in development by them or any other company, which basically was a stake to the heart of all the rumors. But to me, something seemed off about it. Something never felt right. It always just was stuck in my craw when I saw that post from Sucker Punch. Nonetheless, my final video about it mentioned that I basically felt that maybe there was a game in development, but due to the tumultuous nature of the gaming industry, it was either canned, shelved, frozen, whatever terminology you want to use, and that this was Sucker Punch's way of lowering everyone's expectations without saying there was anything in development in the first place. We also knew that at that time, the Sly Cooper movie was in the most confusing place that you can imagine, which, spoiler alert, we're going to be talking more about that later in the video, and it overall made very little to no sense. So, honestly, I said my final piece about the Sly Cooper 5 and then just kind of put Sly Cooper to the back of my mind. Little did I know a few years later that I would be pulling him back to the forefront. I also want to give a quick shout out to Venomous for helping me out with finding all these articles that I'll be quoting from today's video. So fast forward to May 2023. PlayStation did one of their showcases and it was a bit of a letdown. A lot of people were actually quite upset with how small of a turnout the actual showcase was. But afterwards, known insiders across the board started to say that there was a whole bunch of games that were held back from the showcase. This caused many to raise flags and questions as to why Sony wouldn't just announce all the titles that they had ready right away. We'll get back to that. So let's fast forward to basically this year. Jeff Grubb, who, if you don't know, has been a pretty reliable journalist and insider, and has kind of been, in my opinion, the headlong leader in reporting the Summer Game Fest news, or as he calls it, the Summer Game Mess. He reported that Sony does not have anything in terms of sequels to major AAA titles or follow-ups coming out until March 2025. Now, while it makes it seem like PlayStation is going to be pretty barren for the next year, he mentioned that PlayStation actually is going to be having a showcase, very likely between May and June, and that there's a number of smaller established first-party titles by PlayStation that they have plans for 2024, including a brand new Astro Bot game. Quote, they, Sony, said in the financial report that they don't have any major franchise follow-up sequels coming from any of their first-party studios this year, and that's their fiscal year, so through March of 2025. And that can feel kind of barren, but that doesn't mean that they don't have a lot of games that are from these newer studios or partner games from Square Enix or whoever else. They probably do have a number of games to talk about. And also, I do keep hearing that there will be some smaller first-party games like that Astro Bot game that is supposedly still happening this year. Now, when I heard this kind of amazed me a little bit because, I don't know about you, but I genuinely loved the Astro Bot that came on my PlayStation 5. But it made me think, Astro Bot is considered a small-scale game? This cute, adorable platformer? If this game is considered as a smaller IP in the eyes of PlayStation, then what other games could Jeff be talking about that's going to be announced? And this showcase that he's talking about, could some of them be announced there? And if not at the showcase, could we see them sometime soon? So I decided to look at all of Sony's first-party games and titles and basically filtered out all the big AAA games like Ratchet & Clank, The Last of Us, Uncharted, Ghost of Tsushima, Gran Turismo, Horizon, God of War. You get the picture. And here are all the titles that I was basically left with. And again, I want to stress, these are first-party titles, as in games that Sony owns the intellectual rights to, and not just games that they publish. So I decided to do more research and cross-reference all of these titles with my research to see if I can knock off any more titles to make this easier for us to kind of digest and break down, to see if we can kind of do a process of elimination to figure out what these games Jeff Grubb could possibly be talking about. I sorted these titles into 3 categories: green, yellow, and red. If it's green, it means it's a very strong possibility, as I found evidence and research online. If it's red, it means it's highly unlikely, either due to something debunking a recent rumor or whatever, some sort of certain confirmation saying that there is nothing in development. And yellow is that either not much information or very little information, or no information is out there. So we can kind of get an idea as to what we're dealing with. Ape Escape was made by Japan Studio, and sadly, the studio has been since closed. While it's not impossible, Ape Escape was made to show off the technology of the PlayStation, and Astrobot has kind of taken that spot, but a third party still could try to develop for it. EverQuest apparently is going to be making a comeback, but apparently not until 2028, so this is likely not what Jeff is talking about. Jak and Daxter is always a game that I've wanted to see come back, but with the film apparently being a thing, I don't think we would see Jak and Daxter anytime soon, as it would be more likely that we would see the game come out closer to when the film is launched. Little Big Planet and Sackboy is possible, but with the first Sackboy still being kind of new, and with Little Big Planet 3's servers being shut down recently, along with drop support from Mia Molecule's Dreams game engine, I'm having a hard time thinking that we're going to be seeing this IP very soon, but it is still possible. Motorstorm has literally little to no info. The closest thing I could find was a superfan claiming that they did an interview with the game's original creators, and while they would love to do it, Sony allegedly has no interest. Again though, I'm not backing up this claim specifically, just that it's the closest thing to anything that was substantial that I could find about Motorstorm, hence why it's still in the yellow. Resistance is a game made by Insomniac, and recently they had a massive data breach, and I'll be honest, I don't want to talk about it because it was absolutely horrible. So all I'll say is this: even if Insomniac wasn't the team working on a new Resistance game, they would likely be involved in some small way, like they were involved with Spiral's Reignited trilogy. So no, I don't think it's going to be Resistance. Twisted Metal apparently was gonna be a thing, but a report by Jason Schreier put that to rest. Sadly, due to the layoffs, the game was canned back in February 2024. Now, even if the game was handed off to a new team, Jason said that it was still in its early stages of development. So I don't think that it would be ready to be shown. And again, that's if it was passed off to begin with. Wipeout has literally nothing substantial, so it's just going to chill here in the yellow section. Infamous has become infamous with its rumors. I have personally heard of a new Infamous game being in development since like 2019. It's been a phantom, with the only solid news coming out being that Sucker Punch saying in 2022 that no one was currently working on an Infamous title. So I'll leave it in the yellow category because of how much I heard. And then there's Knack. Yeah, I did no research on this one. It just better not be happening. So this actually helps us out a lot because it leaves us with 4 games in total: Gravity Rush, Medieval, Siphon Filter, and the oh so familiar face of Sly Cooper. Gravity Rush has a film that is currently in development, and recently there have been widespread rumors of a remaster coming to PS5 and PC. So to me, this one is very likely to be true. Medieval is a weird one. There was a small nod towards Sir Daniel Fortescue in PlayStation's Productions opening logo reveal, and I had heard through the grapevine that even though on the surface the Medieval remake seemed like it was a bit of a flop, apparently both Other Ocean and Sony were relatively happy with it. There was also apparently a leak that was floating around recently suggesting that Other Ocean was making Medieval 2, and that leak was apparently said to be debunked, but some of the info it mentioned was information that I also heard through the grapevine from a long time ago, so I don't know where I stand when it comes to this rumor, but overall, I do think Medieval has a shot. Siphon Filter is an interesting one because Bend, the studio behind Days Gone, has been wanting and pushing for a new Siphon Filter for a long time. Now, there was a large round of layoffs at Sony recently, and unfortunately some of the studios were completely shut down. However, even though Bend has not released a game since 2019, that being Days Gone, it was not shut down, indicating to me that they probably have a project in development. Additionally, relatively recently, they've made some comments and tweets that seems to be a hint, nudge, nudge towards them potentially working on a brand new Siphon Filter. And lastly, and most certainly not least, we have Sly Cooper. Now, some of you might jump and say, wait, Canadian Guy, what about that Sucker Punch post? They deconfirmed that a Sly Cooper game was in development. Yes, at the time that they posted that post, there may have not been a Sly Cooper game in full-scale development, but it has been 2 years since that post was made. So if they started actual development shortly after Sucker Punch's post and released at the end of 2024, leading into early 2025, that would give whatever team that's working on this game around 2.5 years to make it. So I wanted to see if there was any other additional evidence outside of what we covered years ago to see if there was anything substantial to indicate if there was anything Sly Cooper related coming. And lo and behold, there was something on the official PlayStation Gear website that made me raise an eyebrow. You can choose and pick merch that you want by game name, and one of the games just so happened to be Sly Cooper. However, when you go to the page, it says, coming soon. Please check back for new product additions coming soon to this category. This was also apparently first spotted back in February 2024. Typically, when there is push for merch, there is normally a game to go along with it, or at least there's a significant interest in that game. Then the last nail in the coffin that I discovered before making this video, and to bring it full circle, there was an ominous tweet by someone that we are familiar with. After Jeff Grubb reported that there was likely going to be a State of Play or PlayStation Showcase this month, Special Nick sent out a tweet that made me raise an eyebrow. I think Grubb has already mentioned it, but I'm hearing we're getting a PlayStation show this month. Not sure if State of Play or Showcase, and oh boy am I gonna enjoy this one. Now, this may be a long shot, but just hear me out for a second. Nick was the first person to break the news about Sly Cooper back in 2022. Nick has shown a number of times that he does have legit sources, going as far as getting in-game gameplay of an early build of The Last of Us. When Sucker Punch announced that Sly Cooper was not in development, I can imagine that this probably made him a bit upset. I mean, I've been in a similar situation, and yes, it's not fun to be told that you're wrong over and over again, especially when you have your credibility and name dragged through the mud. But the most validating feeling is when it turns out to be true. The relief is immeasurable. I felt that when Crash Team Rumble was finally announced at the 2023 Game Awards after talking about it for 2 years straight. So now I'm wondering, it just so happens that out of the 4 games that I deemed as the most likely to be the Sony first-party games that Jeff Grubb is talking about, one of them just so happens to be a game that Nick had reported being in development in the past. And Nick seems to indicate that he knows at least some knowledge of the titles that will be there, and he is going to specifically be enjoying it. It's possible that he's alluding to Sly Cooper. Hey guys, future Canadian Guy here. I do have an update on Sly Cooper. While editing this video, Jeff Grubb actually released a video that was very, very interesting. In it, he gives an update on the Summer Game Mess, along with Perfect Dark and a number of other titles, along with some of his own speculative thoughts and hopes. But partway through the video, he said the following that caught my attention.
The thing that I'm like kind of pie in the sky about, but it's something that's been rumored elsewhere, and I have started hearing a little bit about it. And this is, hearing about it, but mostly speculation. So if you go write your headlines about this one, that's on you, because I'm washing my hands of it. I'm just saying, I'm hopeful that we would see something from Sucker Punch that is causing Ghost of Tsushima 2 to take a little bit longer than we were expecting. And my hope is something with Sly Cooper. We'll see. Again, not confirmed, nothing like that. But that's speculation. But it's definitely, there's a smoke out there. Maybe where there's smoke, there's fire. Hopefully we'll find out.
So he is making it very blatantly clear that he is not confirming that Sly Cooper is in development, nor even in the showcase. I want to make that clear because so many other people ran with clickbait headlines about what he said, and I genuinely do not want to do the same. However, he does say that there seems to be some smoke among what seems to be reporters and gaming insiders in regards to Sly Cooper, which to me is very interesting. The main reason why is, quite simply, using deductive reasoning, I was able to come to a conclusion that apparently did have some smoke behind the scenes beforehand. And if there's smoke, typically there's, well, fire. Now, he does mention that perhaps Sucker Punch is working on it, but Jason Schreier came forward to debunk that. And honestly, I do agree with Jason. But the concept of a third-party external studio working on a Sly Cooper title is not alien. In fact, it has already happened in the past, with Sanzaru Games being the lead team behind Sly Cooper Thieves in Time. So in this case, both Jason and Jeff can be right, especially since Jason's original bone of contention wasn't the fact that Sly Cooper was in development, but the fact that Sucker Punch was working on it. So we'll just have to see how this goes. Now, does this mean that we're going to see these games 100% at this planned showcase? Not necessarily. Like I mentioned earlier at the start of the video, there was a large batch of games that were allegedly held back from the 2023 showcase in May. Last minute changes to marketing and timing can change the trajectory these games could be on. However, in reference to games that Jeff and many other insiders are referring to, I believe the 4 most likely candidates are Gravity Rush, Medieval, Siphon Filter, and Sly Cooper. If I was a gambling man, which I'm not, I would put my money on Sly Cooper and Gravity Rush. Now, this video took you down a very complicated path. I know, especially for Sly Cooper. But this isn't Sly Cooper's first rodeo when it comes to, complicated development. If you didn't know, there was also a Sly Cooper movie that had development that was so bloody complicated it wasn't even funny. So if you want to hear more about that, check out this video here. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.